لكم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وأما بعد. Let me say, as the Executive Director of CAIR Michigan, that it's my honor and privilege to be here with you on this Saturday afternoon at Eastern Michigan University. And I will start off with a few tips in regards to answering questions in general, and then I will go into a few of the frequently asked questions pertaining to Muslims and Islam in this contemporary era, and then avail myself for some questions. Let me also say that some of the things you may hear from myself firstly, and Sister Nadia, and then Brother Haris Ahmed will be the third presenter, may sound like some of it is redundant, and that's not necessarily by accident, that's by design for reinforcement. I also suggest that, and this isn't a khutbah, or preaching, this is more of a interactive session, and I would suggest for reinforcement purposes as well, that if you hear something, or if I'm stressing something, I would suggest that you would take notes and write it down. Because besides listening, we know that we learn things and we retain things the more we use our five senses in the learning process. And Allah says this, alam al-qalam, right, that He taught by the pen. And writing things down does help us remember. In answering questions about Muslims and Islam, or if you want to try to convince someone of your point, I would like to make two initial suggestions before getting to specific questions. And you'll see how these suggestions play into how I pose some questions that we've been asked recently as a community, as well as some historical questions that have been asked about us, or we could say since 9/11, how these are tips in terms of more effectively answering questions. The first one is, when we answer questions about Muslims and Islam in general, that we should start off defining what Islam is or what Muslims are, instead of what Islam is not or what Muslims are not. Or we should say what Sharia is instead of what it is not, etc. This is a very good book right here pertaining to framing. You don't have to even read the whole book, you can just read the preface or introduction part of it. It's called Don't Think of an Elephant. It's written by a psychologist by the name of George Lakoff, who actually was one of the advisors to the Obama 2008 presidential campaign. He's a Democratic strategist. This book discusses how for the past decade and a half, actually 2 decades, how the Republicans were spanking the Democrats in regards to messaging. And this book talks about framing. And I'll just give you a quick example from the book. It's titled Don't Think of an Elephant as an example. Now, if I were to tell all of you to close your eyes, keep your eyes open, and I say, whatever you do, I want you to clear your mind and think about anything, just don't think about an elephant. Don't think about an elephant that's in Africa, don't think about an elephant that's in India, don't think about a gray elephant, don't think about a black elephant, don't think about an elephant with tusks or an elephant without tusks, don't think about a man who, like Hannibal, who's riding an elephant. And then I ask you, what are you thinking of? Then you'll say, elephant. Because you've heard it over and over and over again. So therefore, if you say what something is not, and you're constantly asked about the question, like you say, well, what's Islam's position on terrorism? And then you say, well, Islam is against terrorism. People have heard this so much, Islam and terrorism combined, that you're reinforcing the frame, even though you're saying Islam is not terrorism. Okay? The second book is a must-read for activists. Actually, when Malcolm X started in the Nation of Islam days, there was a paramilitary training group in the Nation of Islam called the Fruit of Islam. Malcolm X started this and trained the people. The book that those brothers had to read when they went out into the streets of how to present the message of the Nation of Islam and how to convince the people to buy into some of their ideology was this book written by Dale Carnegie. It's been translated in, I think, over 30 languages. Urdu, Arabic, Farsi, a number of languages, French. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one point that this book makes is that once you tell someone a half-truth, or you don't tell someone the truth and they find out later that you did not tell them the truth, that you break their confidence and that they will then discredit perhaps all of what you said. And at the same time, if you're willing to be truthful and point out some of the faults of your organization that your community has, in candor, people actually appreciate that. So, in regards to how we answer questions of Muslims or Islam, we have to be honest when we see certain things going on in the Muslim world or certain extremes. We just can't say there are no extremes. We just can't say that all of the acts of extremism that go on, let's say in Pakistan and Afghanistan, everything is an Indian and Israeli conspiracy. You know, we Muslims, we love conspiracy theories, right? Everything is a Zionist Hindu conspiracy. That brother really didn't go and blow himself up in the mosque. It was Indian intelligence that did it. You know, we have to be honest with people. You know, everything is not a Zionist Indian conspiracy. We do have extremists amongst us as Muslims, and actually this goes all the way back to the time of the Sahaba, who assassinated Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Muslims did that, right? Muslims did. Who killed Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, the son of the first Khalifa? Muslims did this. Who killed Ammar ibn Yasir, the honorable companion? Muslims did this. Muslims, they were extremists way back then who did these types of things. They didn't have the technology of explosives and suicide bombing. This stuff happened 1400 years ago. So we have to be intellectually honest. And people will appreciate this when we're intellectually honest. Now, the first question is a contemporary issue that's going on right now. And I've been interviewed about this a couple of times in the last 2 days in terms of what's going on in the Middle East. And as we discuss about answering frequently asked questions about Muslims and Islam, and many times our faith is tied in to current geopolitical situations or current geopolitical crises. So I know some of us say we don't like politics, but the reality is that our politics or politics in the Muslim world and our faith have been tied in together, and they concretize us. Whether we want to answer for it or not, people in America see things on the news every day, Fox News, CNN, Katie Couric, and then we're NPR even, and we're asked about it. Okay? Now, the question that's been posed is, be it Tunisia or Yemen or what's going on in Egypt, is that isn't it better for the people of the Arab world and better for our country if we allow friendly dictators to run the Muslim world than the Islamists if there were democratic elections? Can we repeat that question for you? Okay. Wouldn't it be better for the Arab people and for our interests as Americans if we let friendly dictators run those countries instead of allowing Islamists to run those countries? This term Islamists, we don't use that term Islamist. Islamist means people who use Islam for a political agenda. So when people ask these questions, we have to look at or answering perhaps a misconception or a fear that's behind the question, because there is another misconception or perhaps a fear behind the question being asked to begin with. And the